Hazard pay is back in the third stimulus package. How much is it? How does it apply? In the third stimulus package, it's going to be $1,500 for essential worker who worked in the pandemic who made less than $25,000. It falls under the earned income tax credit, $1,500. But will there be more hazard pay in the future? Possibly. $10,000 was what Nancy Pelosi wanted to give you under the HEROES Act in 2020. It was calculated at $13 an hour from the start of the pandemic to 60 days after the pandemic is over. In this throwback video on hazard pay, I explain who are essential workers, how do you get hazard pay, how do you calculate hazard pay, and more. Enjoy this throwback video on Overnights LATE about hazard pay. An agreement is reached on hazard pay, but why has it not come out yet? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoons LATE with wow, this is an incredible day. This is an incredible day of reporting because after 2 weeks of exclusive reporting on this channel, everything that I've reported to you, line item, item by item, has been confirmed by Steve Mnuchin this morning on CNBC. Let me get to the details. This is Afternoons at LATE. Thank you for joining me every day at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. Starts with a check, then goes to hazard pay, then FPUC, and finally rent assistance. Hazard pay is that $10,000, up to $10,000 or up to $5,000 for essential workers who worked during the pandemic or still working during the pandemic. Doesn't matter if you work several essential jobs or were laid off or were fired, you're qualified for it. And we all sat here wondering what was the fate of hazard pay in that negotiation room over the last 2 weeks. Steve Mnuchin confirmed this morning that it was agreed upon. He went through an analysis that I had been doing with you over the weekend, and he basically confirmed every single thing that this channel has been reporting. That hazard pay, which seemed on its face to be a very big ticket item, because it is $10,000 per person, was absolutely not what caused negotiations to break down on Friday. It was a bailout of states valued at $1 trillion in the Democratic proposal for states who had gotten money on the first pandemic and were back with their hands out like a scene out of Oliver asking for more money. What makes this so shocking, and that's why I'm doing this video specifically for you, is that first bailout was to pay hazard pay employees as well, and they didn't. This is the first anyone's going to be telling you until this video. Here is the analysis. States and local cities and counties applied to the federal government before the first stimulus package was approved and said, we can't make budgets. We need money to pay our firefighters, our public work officials, our street employees, our sanitation, all our hazard pay public civil employees. Also independent contractors, our painters, our maintenance people. We need money to pay them. So the federal government says, sure, here you go. It was a fortune. It was a lot of money. Guess what they did, the states? They didn't pay you. They fired you. I know for a fact. I know it locally. I know the people specifically in local sanitation who have worked their entire life for local municipalities. They were told, you either take early retirement or you are fired. We don't have money for you. What do you mean you don't have money for me? You just got fortunes from the federal government. The problem is they didn't use that money for you, the essential worker. What they did was the following. A lot of cities and states and counties, and I'm not pointing names or naming anyone specifically, but what they did was that they could not make budget because their businesses were closed because of a lockdown, and those businesses pay taxes based upon their earnings. There was no earnings. So suddenly cities who had not saved money over the years, who had spent money like it was going out of fish out of water, like it's a fish eating in an open pool, realized, oh, we have no money in our bank account. We can't pay anyone. Federal government, give us some money. Well, they got the money and they didn't pay the people. They used it to coat their coffers of their bank accounts. In New York, the most obvious example was Governor Cuomo, who got an enormous sum of money, but then when it came to time to turn it out, to pass it out, there was no track of him sending out the money in great regards. No. So people were laid off, and if this sounds very familiar, it should. The same thing happened with the airlines, whose employees are also essential workers for purposes of definition of hazard pay. Whether you work the tarmac, you work the plane, you're on the plane, you're a stewardess or an airline check-in person, or you're on the tarmac and you're doing this like the movie Airplane, you qualify for hazard pay money. What they do? Well, they ask for fortunes from the federal government, separate and apart from the state's bailout. They got the fortunes, and what they do? They fired them. They lay them off. They didn't pay them the money. So guess who this time around is back asking for more money? Airlines, fortunes, and the states. So Nancy and Chuck proposed in the HEROES Act a $1 trillion allotment to be paid to states who wanted to pay that money to their essential workers, was the pitch. So wait a second. This sounds like double math. This sounds like double calculation. This sounds like double request, LA. It is. Why is a state who says I need money to pay my firefighters asking for money for firefighters when in the same bill there's a provision that says that firefighter's employer, the city, can go apply for hazard pay for that employee and get the hazard pay for them? No one's going to tell you but me that. Because that is the financial games that have been played at your that are hurting you. People have played financial games to coat the bank accounts of states so that you, the hazard pay employee, are being used to get states double money when you're not even getting a damn penny. So as we sit here today, the great news was that you were approved for hazard pay. Well, not, approved for you personally, but the hazard pay program was approved. It was agreed upon. Steve Mnuchin and Mark Meadows on behalf of the Republicans and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on behalf of the Democrats agreed to hazard pay. It may have sounded like a lot of money, but it was agreed to. But it wasn't green-lighted because the entire package was stranglehold because of one item elsewhere in the package. A bailout to states that included a pitch of hazard pay for its employees as well. Oh boy, LA, this is just give me the popcorn and give me a side of tea. This is just, I can't, this is a bigger revelation than, bringing receipts to a Real Housewives reunion. I mean, my goodness, yes. No one does this but me. Not that I find it very fascinating, because it is sort of fascinating. It's like a Agatha Christie novel, made out of a lone instrument. But no one goes into this detail because I've been frustrated for you personally that you're sitting back there wondering, where is my hazard pay money? A lot of people have been emailing me and texting and DMing and every mechanism possible to say, hey, where's my hazard pay money, LA? Do I qualify for hazard pay? When would I get hazard pay? The important thing for you to understand is that we have an agreement. We have an agreement. I have data from the states, this is Steve Mnuchin, saying that the states had money left over from the last time. Money for you, the essential worker. I've given them flexibility on how to use that money for firefighters, essential worker. No reason for them to lay them off, but they did. We have more money on the table. Certain states have financial issues. New York keeps on raising taxes. People moving out of New York. Exactly what I just said. New York wasn't making budget because it thought it was going to get a fortune in revenue from business number one and business number two and homeowner number one and homeowner two. But what they did was they raised the business taxes, they raised the property taxes, whatever it is. I don't know what the taxes are. I don't live there. I'm not going to report the details of what New York is doing. But they weren't set up financially correctly before the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, they said, give us money for essential workers, but didn't give it to the essential workers. When asked by CNBC this morning, Steve Mnuchin said that the problem is not a blue state versus red state problem. It's a problem across the board. He spoke to governor Texas, and based upon the proposal, they have enough to cover their deficit. I understand New York has problems. I wish they should have a financial control board. I want New York City to succeed. There you go. Andrew Cuomo's problems with balancing budgets, or the Mayor de Blasio's inability to make budgets, is what's causing essential workers in Kansas not to get hazard pay. Yeah, it's literally like that. If you don't realize, Chuck Schumer, who's in the room, is representing New York. Is there a constitutional limit on how much to borrow? No. They can borrow enough money to get the money for you. So this is also really great news. You know, I had sat here for a week and wondered, is hazard pay so expensive as a bill that these parties won't agree to it? You heard me talk about it. I said, you know, maybe they'll reduce hazard pay. Maybe they won't pay $10,000. They'll pay less money, like the Romney plan. Remember, the Romney plan pays less money. Maybe they don't want the $10,000. They want to do it $8,000 or $7,000. I mean, ultimately, they may have done that. But I was also concerned that they would just throw it away because it's just a lot of, you know, it looks expensive. Well, no. He said, we split everything that makes sense. Hallelujah. He says we were splitting things that made sense to split them. If they started at $0 and we offer 10, that doesn't make sense to split it. But we went line by line and we split things on things we agreed on. We split on food. They said she was right. We didn't give any money for food, so we gave them more food through 2021. We can go down the list. He just didn't want to give money, or the Republicans didn't want to give money, to bail out states. And ironically, as we sit here today, those states have the audacity to not allow you to get your stimulus check, your FPUC, your hazard pay, your rent assistance, because they want to bail out, and are using that bailout based upon a calculation of why they want to use the money for the their workers, who are essential workers under the hazard pay plan, who they never paid the first time around. They laid them off. So if you're watching this video and you're a sanitation worker in a city and were laid off due to the pandemic, and you calculate in your mind, you're like, how many hours did I work from January to the present? You calculate, and I say, take that number, times it by $13 an hour. You're like, dude, that's like $14,000. You qualify for hazard pay. You qualify for hazard pay because hazard pay is the number of hours you work, whether it's full-time or part-time, partial or overtime or furloughed or any type of hours, from January all the way up to the present. You do that calculation, you get a number. If it's $10,000, you get $10,000 if you made $100,000 last year or less. If you made more than $100,000 last year or less, you get $5,000. Some people ask me, is it a lump sum? Yes, it's a lump sum. It literally comes as a lump sum. If you aren't at that threshold, you also get the lump sum. So if you're at $8,000 and you only made $40,000 last year, you get an $8,000 lump sum check. And then going forward, you get $13 an hour if you're still employed by the essential worker. It also qualifies if you're at different places of essential work. So there's one here and one there. That also qualifies. But rather than you getting that $10,000, the states used you as sort of a token way to get themselves money when they've either laid you off or reduced your hours or terminated you or asked you to take early retirement, and now may try not to give you hazard pay as well. Oh boy. They think we're all idiots, don't they? I'm not an idiot, and hopefully I explained this very clearly to you. That's my job as well, to make sure that everything is always clear. So the great news is everyone agreed to hazard pay. The great news is you're going to get hazard pay. The great news is that once that two events occur, you're going to get your hazard pay eventually. One, Mark Meadows is banned from the negotiation room after kicking tables, smashing them, refusing to negotiate. And two, after Nancy and Chuck get rid of their $1 billion bailout to states, it's like, how dare you? Get that thing out of there. Give money to the people. And for every press conference that Nancy and Chuck talk about children and children and children, well, guess what? Get the money to the children and stop giving money to the state governors and their coffers. Coming up next is FPUC, and we have big developments about that. A lot of people are asking, when would I get my FPUC? Is this, is that? I'm going to be answering all that confusion about the $400, the $100, the $600 coming up next. Go to the front of this channel. There's a subscribe and alert button. No one's doing this type of work for you. I want to ensure that you get the correct information right now, right how. No one's covering hazard pay. There's big developments changing by the minute. So go to the front of this channel where there's a subscribe button. Hit it. There's an alert button, a little bell. Hit that. I'm here for you. We're going to get through this together. Thank you for staying positive, staying motivated, staying focused. And join me next on the next video with LA Late.